Ваше здоровье.
Остальные Бессарабии.
И старайтесь забор, чтобы не попадал в объектив.
Members of the German charity Children of Chernobyl are making their first ever visit to the site of the disaster that gave rise to its creation. A letter from national agency InterInform and valid identity papers are enough to be allowed through the 2 border crossings into the restricted areas that surround Chernobyl. Even 17 years after the disaster, Chernobyl is still cordoned off. 30 kilometres from the nuclear reactor, the roads are deserted. It's strictly out of bounds to children. In the area directly surrounding the power station, the radiation in some places is still dangerously high. Rimma, the tour guide, carries a Geiger counter with her everywhere.
The natural background level is up to 20. Just here, where I stand, it's 70. Around 70 here, where I stand.
74, 75, 78.
82, it's growing.
Oh.
Some hot particles somewhere here.
It varies a lot. Over there it's quite a bit lower. A village once stood here. After the meltdown, it was so contaminated that it had to be buried. Photographer Rüdiger Lübricht and the interpreter seem to be oblivious to the lingering radiation levels. Rüdiger is here on behalf of the charity. Olga, a Belarusian German, is helping out. She was just a child when the accident happened. In 3 years, on the 20th anniversary of the catastrophe, they are going to publish a book.
Das ist noch relativ sachlich alles.
It is still so essential for me. I believe I would be more impressed if I could get to see the abandoned cities.
Städte sieht.
A visitor centre has been constructed in front of the huge concrete sarcophagus built around the destroyed reactor after the disaster. Joachim Balz, managing director of Children of Chernobyl, is surprised by the low levels of radiation, just double normal levels. Since this fact was made public, many more visitors have poured in from around the world, as the visitors' book testifies. Unbelievable. Pure tourism. It's incredible. Look at that. That's one for the family album. This is the family in front of the Chernobyl nuclear reactor. I can't quite put it into words. It's a bit eerie. You get the feeling it's not really a vacation spot, but it already appears a bit touristy, even though it really shouldn't. If you look at these things, these albums for example, you get the feeling you're on a reconnaissance mission. It's running the risk of losing sight of the scale of the disaster. There is surely a difference, whether you're only here for 1, 2, 3 hours, or, like the workers here, do the 14-day cycle over years. The golden rule for workers here is 2 weeks work, 2 weeks off. Former English teacher Rimma has followed it religiously for the 9 years she has been taking visitors to the sarcophagus. It took 6 months to seal the reactor in this concrete tomb, with the help of 90,000 workers. Many of them are no longer alive today. The sarcophagus is now the most expensive building in the entire former Soviet Union. Late at night, on 26th of April 1986, an experiment was being undertaken in Reactor 4 of the Lenin nuclear power station. Shortly after 2 o'clock, the reactor exploded. The inhabitants of Pripyat were enjoying the warm spring Saturday, making preparations for the large May celebration. One day later, and Pripyat was sealed off. Phones no longer worked. The authorities informed the 100,000 inhabitants that they were to be accommodated in tents for 3 days. Women and children were evacuated. Many men remained in order to help with the rescue work. 3 weeks later, they too had to go. As we now know, too late. An eerie shrine remains where Pripyat's kindergarten was plundered and devastated in the chaos. The vandals clearly didn't know anything about radiation poisoning. They may well have paid dearly for their booty. Every picture tells Rüdiger Lübricht a story. In Soviet times, gas masks used to be basic equipment at kindergartens like these. The Cold War brought with it the constant threat of nuclear attack. But these are untouched. No one expected nuclear fallout from their own power station. Even now, there are still no reliable numbers of the victims and damage caused by the disaster. One thing is sure, however, cancer rates soared here after the disaster. Joachim Balz now understands exactly why his charity exists. The idea that loads of children used to live here and now are dead is difficult to comprehend. It is, however, real. It sends shivers down my spine. Along with cancer rates, the number of abortions rose sharply too. Women were afraid of giving birth to mutated or crippled children. I have 2 small children myself. It's running through my head that children the same age as my kids used to play in this kindergarten. I'd had a completely crazy idea. I have a small son who loves to telephone, and there's a telephone over there, and I just thought I could just take it as a souvenir, but that's absurd. Foreign tour operators now offer daily tours of Chernobyl at 4 times the price they charged a couple of years ago. Instead of $30, the trip now costs $120. The view hasn't changed, it's just more expensive. The explosion affected us all. It's right to come here and have a look around, and I think it's okay to have a guide and explanation. But what I saw today, what I don't find okay, is when it's connected to mindless money grabbing. That people are just after money, and a whole Chernobyl tourism is developing, that's not okay.
Chernobyl Tourismus entsteht und das ist nicht okay. Wenn das aber eine hiesige Organisation...
If a local organisation was set up to charge cheap entry, with lunch, transfers, then a little guided tour in small groups, then that would be okay. And if it was like that, with some of the money going to the Ministry for Humanitarian Affairs, so it would in the long run help their own country, then that would be okay. But that tourism organisations are solely out to profit from Chernobyl, I find shameful, and as bad as if they were doing tours of a concentration camp.
Organisationen sind, die selber damit Profit machen, finde ich das beschämend und schrecklich, als wenn sie einen Tourismus in Konzentrationslager unternehmen. Das finde ich schrecklich.
In 2003, just under 200 tourists and 2,000 specialised visitors were allowed into the restricted zone. Most of the specialists, at least, had a good reason. The workers from Children of Chernobyl are also here with a good reason. The charity provides medical instruments to local hospitals, helps to train doctors and recuperate sick children. Only in the restricted zone is there nothing they can do. There are no children here. Children of Chernobyl have left a few ultrasonoscopes on loan here at the Ivankov Hospital, directly adjacent to the restricted zone. In total, they have donated over 200 in the region. The Ukrainian paediatrician and German engineer get on immediately. Our district is in the radioactive zone. All the children here have to be examined at least once a year. In the past year, we have examined around 5,000 children. We hope that you have great success with your future research in the coming years with this equipment.
Желаю вам дальнейших успехов. Danke. И вам спасибо большое. Wir bedanken uns auch.
Спасибо.
The atomic energy enterprise at Chernobyl was once considered the ultimate example of Soviet technology. The explosion in Block 4, that caused 7 days of furious fires and killed 28 men, instantly obscured what really happened that fateful day. It was a long time before the full consequences were known. Irina, one of 700 workers who remained when the power station reopened, feeds the fish. For 3 years, no more electricity has been produced here. Irina now worries that groups of visitors will want to see the power station from the inside. According to Ukrainian law, pre-registered people are already allowed to take a look around. So far, it's mainly been national and international scientists. The control room is still occupied 24 hours a day. At least 4 supervisors are on duty here. Sergei is a service engineer and oversees the now closed down blocks 1 and 2. His father came to Pripyat 10 years before the disaster and also worked in the nuclear power station. Anton's father worked here too. On the night of the accident, he was sitting in this very room. Today Anton is the boss of the whole sector. He's been here now for 7 years. He speaks ironically of his nuclear monster, which he must guard. The alarm signals are tested regularly, proof that everything works well, in comparison to 1986, when the safety systems failed when the power went. I was 13 when the accident happened. I was in 6th class. You want to know the story of my father? He can tell you that himself. He told me that you could see it, just beautiful smoke and very loud. His shoes fell apart, but that was it. His hair didn't fall out, and he later had children. So much for the consequences. So now you, Sergei. And don't forget to say how dangerous and terrible everything was. I was 11 when the accident happened. I remember exactly. It was completely calm in Pripyat, except that we had to remain in our house for 24 hours with closed windows. There was no information. Then we were asked over a loud hailer to wait at the entrance. We then drove off to goodness knows where in a bus convoy.
Колонна автобусов подходила и развозили всех в неопределенном направлении.
Anton and Sergei would rather work in an active nuclear power station in the Ukraine, but their colleagues there often have to wait months for their salary. For the moment, Chernobyl is a safe job. After an introduction and breakfast, another group from children of Chernobyl is taken to the so-called Cemetery of the Machines. This is where all the vehicles and devices used in the clean-up operation following the disaster are left to die. No one is allowed in. The radiation levels here are somewhere in the region of 700 microroentgen, a near-fatal level.
Payback, and it's a story of women's revenge.
In defiance of the radiation warnings, looters stripped this site. The engines can now be found on the black market in the Ukrainian capital, Kiev. A macabre thought, if you think of the men who served these machines. 800,000 men, the so-called liquidators, were involved in removing the radiated machines. How many of these paid for their employment with their lives can only be guessed at. The victims number anywhere from 30 to 70,000. Statistics are generally rounded down. The Ukraine would quickly be bankrupted if forced to pay compensation to all the widows and orphans of the tragedy. The group don't stay long. About 25 kilometres down the road, in the small village of Opachichi, they are expected on the next leg of their tour. Over 250,000 people were evacuated from the region surrounding Chernobyl in 1986. Around 500 returned a short time later, after, so they claimed, life outside their homeland started to make them sick. Here, they believe, the world is as it should be. Baba Nastya and dead Nikolai live around the corner. Rimma warned the couple that Rudiger wants to take a photo. You're most welcome. Feel free. "79-year-old Baba Nastya beams with pride as she shows off her photos, taken on the beach in Brazil. Nastya's twin sister has lived there for 55 years. Her granddaughter wants to get married out there. Dead Nikolai is also proud of his pig. He's fattening it up for the next time the children come home. The old people aren't afraid of radioactivity. For 17 years they've lived here, with, they claim, no worse complaint than the grumbling of their old bones. A few houses along lives Baba Valya. She loves visitors. Valya has had rheumatism for quite some time. A life of manual labour has hit her hard. And if a group of strong young men and women turn up on her doorstep, they can help out a little. It's the wine harvest in Chernobyl. Baba Valya is famous for her fine wine, her jam, and her special vodka, said to clean the body and protect against radioactive contamination. Valya is surprised sometimes at her guests from abroad. Scarcely one of them wants to try her delicacies. She can't understand it. Surely she is the living proof of a healthy diet in Chernobyl.
Очень вкусный. Очень вкусный, настоящая Изабелла.
Olga Tibez remembers hearing about the disaster as a child. I'm visiting Chernobyl for the first time. I always wanted to come over and see it with my own eyes. I've been involved with the issue for quite a while now. I just wanted to see what actually happened, because it's always been from books and films that I got my information. But if you really see and feel it, it is a different thing altogether. I can't describe it. You've just got to come and see it for yourself. 18 kilometers from the reactor, Madame Valentina is preparing dinner. She is the landlady of a local guest house. She's become used to foreign guests. I've been working here for 16 years now. 16 years. Valentina taught herself all her catering skills. She too follows the golden rule. She's on shift for 2 weeks now, before leaving to the country for a fortnight. Working in Chernobyl earns people like Valentina more than double Ukraine's average wage, between 200 and 400 euros a month. I openly confess, I came here in order to make money. I had a medical and came. The physicians were a bit taken aback and asked me whether I was being forced to work there. I told them I wasn't afraid. They were adamant it was still radioactive. I even believe a little radioactivity is good for you. Rimma is not quite so naive as Valentina. Her guests have to take a radiation test after the excursion before they can enter the restaurant. Today everything is in the green.
Okay.
The ingredients for the 5-course menu don't come from Chernobyl. As a safety measure, a shot of vodka is served with the meal. Rimma too has a small tot. After each course, as is customary in the Ukraine, a short speech. We've got a few days behind us now. I want to make it short. We've taken some photos, made a film, we've seen the place, had a lot of fun, and even had glorious weather. Therefore, we'd like to thank the weather god, which I believe to be a weather goddess. So I raise a glass to women.
И выпьем за Бога, который дал нам такую погоду, но я думаю, что это был Бог женщин, поэтому выпьем за женщин. Какой чудесный
Rudiger, it was really nice to meet you.
Что вы нас примете?
Nice to meet you, Rudiger. Thank you very much. I'm pleased that you come and you love this excursion.
Yes.
Also, really, of course. Tell the friends we are really very glad to meet people here, and thank you for the job you are doing in Ukraine. This is very important.
We'll keep on with this job.
Move on, yeah. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah. Bye. Okay.
Just down the road, the Pripyat Bar, the place to be on a Saturday night in the restricted zone, is starting to fill up. The vodka is cheap, and DJ Vera knows what her guests want. To switch off, get tanked up, and forget all about being in the restricted zone for 2 or 3 hours. "6,000 people, nearly all of them men, work in the restricted zone. Scarcely one of them comes from Chernobyl, but it has become for many their second home. "11 o'clock is closing time. The tourists haven't got far to go. Right next to the restricted zone is the Chernobyl InterInform Hotel. 9 double rooms, or 9 suites to be precise, each with a television and bathroom.
This. Yep. So this is our bedroom. Yeah. Well, this is $60, 320 grivnas, breakfast included. All the rooms look the same. We will open you the next one, and you will see that only the colors will be different. So, people can pay with credit cards, but only with 2, Master and Visa. Master and Visa cards. Japanese joke that this is Chernobyl Hilton. That's a joke, of course. That's not Hilton, of course, but nevertheless, it's nothing to be ashamed of.
Chernobyl isn't short of culture either. Tamara and Konstantin Borisenko regularly give concerts. anyone is free to listen to the rehearsals.
Такая полоса, и нисколько мы с тобой не постарели.
Tamara sings of the beauty of aging, a period of life no one should fear.
Откружат и отпоют метели. Снова будет звон капели.
Upon leaving the town and restricted zone, you're quickly reminded where you were, in a radioactive zone. Only after being guaranteed free of radiation is any car allowed to leave and begin the long journey home.
И печаль, и даже седину с тобой мы разделили. Да что там седина, пускай блестит, не жаль. Откружат и отпоют метели. Снова будет звон капели.